Hello there and welcome back. This is the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel, and my name is Art Burns, and I am just so excited to be here with you. I say this all the time, I know, but it really is. It's such a privilege to be able to share this time and these thoughts and these really important, this really important information and practices and sort of philosophies that we talk about here. And it really is. I see it as a privilege, and I thank you for the opportunity, and I feel that every single day, and I think that's part of my excitement, right? Is that I feel like I this is just such a again, it's just such a privilege that I get to do this every day. A lot of times when we think about things I almost just said it. We think about things that anything that is our work related, right? That's part of our income stream, right? We call that something we have to do, right? And that sets up some pretty difficult and awkward money understandings. And if you'd like to talk about that, that's not what the topic of this podcast is, but that's something that I'm very well versed in. So this would be something that if you have, kind of awkward feelings or understandings around money, I would invite you to book a call with me so we could talk about that, because that is something that I can help coach you through. I mean, it's not something that I necessarily do as a matter of routine, but it's something I've been very, very involved with over my life, and something I have some key insight into, from work that I've done. So if you're interested in that kind of conversation, I'm more than happy to have that conversation with you. There will be a link in the description to book a call with me, as so many of you have. And I want to, thank you so much, all of you, for all of you who book calls with me. Again, I say this all the time. Like, the idea, of course, is I'm putting myself out there so that I can help you on a one-on-one, individualized kind of way, right? But if these calls don't wind up in us working with each other, it doesn't make it even a smidge less valuable or less enjoyable or less important. It's so rewarding to talk to you. Okay, all of you. I love it. And so, I was thinking about it that, some days I get up and I do these podcasts, and again, it's like the thrill that I get from it, because it's something I get to do. It's just so exciting to me, and the thrill I get from it is so high that, some days I get off here and I'm literally buzzing, and I feel like, wow, that episode was I crushed it. It was the best yet. Like, I can't believe it. But then it's like crickets from everyone out there, right? But then there's other days where it's like, well, I got through it. It's okay. It's good enough, I guess. I'm putting it out there and see what happens. And like, people will comment and write me and schedule calls to talk about. People write back that, that was the most amazing thing. It was perfect. The message that I received from this was perfect, and it changed everything for me. Those are literal emails that I get from people. And so I think it's really interesting. I think it says something about our work, right? And I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday, another person who does coaching, and we're kind of, helping each other out, like motivating and inspiring and, sort of giving feedback and stuff, just a friendly exchange that we have. And we were talking yesterday how it's not our job to be, magical every time, right? It's our job to just show up and deliver the content, right? And so some days, you might resonate with something I say in a way that, again, feels life-changing, but a person next to you, and not virtually next to you, and next one on the list, didn't get much out of it. But then next week, that person might get something that you don't even, you're like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But the other person's like, life-changing, so it's so subjective, and it says so much about, what we're all going through. Right. And how different our experiences are, and how perfectly individualized, our experiences can be that way, and how they really can, the same content can have so many different sort of effects and impacts on people. So I find that fascinating. And it's just something I really love to contemplate and I really love to see it in real time too. So once again, thank you, all of you. Thank you for all all of the, amazing emails that you send, for booking all the calls. I mean, at this point, I'm on a rate of, it's like 3 or 4 people every week are booking calls to chat. And I could not be more happy. And again, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a working thing. I'm not here just for that. I'm here to provide you with whatever it is that I can that's going to help you live life the way that I've learned to live life, which is free from the stress, the anxiety, the depression, the ragey anger, and all of the different reactivity that comes along with it, right? And all the pain and suffering that results from it, right? I want you to live a life that's free from suffering, that's filled with happiness. And that's why I do this every day. So I'm happy to jump on a call with people. It benefits both of us. So I just wanted to thank you. And if you've ever thought like, gosh, I don't know if I really have anything to say. I would like to, but I don't know. It feels weird, whatever. I get it. I'm not trying to force you into anything, but I promise I make it very unweird. Okay? I mean, and weird's my thing. So I know how weird can be. And I purposely, I make it very comfortable for you. And I make it very easy for you too. Like, I do the talking until you're ready. Like, don't worry about it. All right? So if you're on the fence, as it were, or just kind of considering or contemplating, go ahead and check it out. Right. And if it doesn't feel good, we can always end the call early. It's not a problem. Right. It doesn't cost anything except just a little bit of time for us. And so yeah, if you've been thinking or considering it, I invite you to try it, because some of these calls are really amazing, and you never know what's going to come out of one of the calls. Right. And that's for both of us again. So, I'm benefiting too. Right. So anyway, so what we're going to talk about today, I gave you a little teaser on it yesterday. So there's no secret, no big surprise here. We're going to talk about someone who recently lost it in a very public way. Now, a lot of people are talking about this individual, and let me not bury the lead, as they say in journalism, right? We're going to talk about Piers Morgan. Now, I'm sure you've heard of him. He's a very popular news personality right now. Myself, I got away from mainstream media a long time ago, actually, because I felt such an identification with the rage, right? And, just the, it's anyway, maybe it's a story for a different time, but suffice to say that I got out, and I will make a note to do an episode on this in the not too distant future. But I got out of mainstream media for the same reason, really, I got out of professional sports, because I found myself just so identified with all of it that it was just making me absolutely miserable. And I've talked to people about that, and they say things like, well, isn't not watching the news, isn't that kind of like bliss bypass or some kind of privilege or something like that? And I see why you'd say that, but I don't, I think to watch the news and just get angry and not motivate yourself with that anger is not really useful, And so I have done some activism over the years that I have not been watching the news, and I have had very meaningful conversations that have swayed people's opinions about certain topics that I feel are important. So it's not that I'm completely detached from what happens. I just choose to get my news from more independent and less opinion based, less like red meat, kind of thing, where they say, red meat for the base, it's just like, it's very well known that if you watch, the liberal media like MSNBC or CNN, 95, or the New York Times or any of these, Washington Post, like 95% of the people who engage in that news are Democrat and liberal, right? 95%. And if you go into like the Fox News and the Breitbart and all these, Wall Street Journal, right? It's 95% the other way, right? And so what these news organizations are doing, they're just giving their audience what their audience is there for, right? Which means that all you're going to get from the liberal media is liberal points of view, and all you're going to get from the conservative media is conservative points of view. And what that does is it creates a false sense of reality. We need balance. And so what I choose to do is I try to get my news from people who are neither, right? And there's lots of them. If you want to have this conversation, we can have this conversation, but that's not what this podcast is about. So let me bring it back home here, and let's talk about Piers Morgan. So again, he's a very popular news personality, right? And for a long time, he worked here in the U.S. For CNN, I believe it was. He had his own show, like every night kind of thing. And now, though, for the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, 15 maybe, I don't know how long it's been, but now he's back in England, where he's originally from, and he does like the up until like a couple of weeks ago, he was doing the English equivalent of Good Morning America, I guess you would say, right? Just a morning news show, right? And so as you all probably also know, there was a big and very controversial, very sort of very exciting interview that happened with the royal family, the Prince Andrew, I believe, or Prince Harry, I think it was, and his wife Meghan Markle. And if I'm confusing who that is, please forgive me. Again, I'm not very well versed on all this, so I'm kind of I should have researched this and made notes. I'm sorry, me, just kind of going for it. This is a mindfulness podcast, not a news podcast. So pardon me for my lack of details here, or my misunderstanding of details. But anyway, they did this interview with Oprah Winfrey, right, in which they were talking about some of the really kind of nasty stuff that this woman who married into the royal family has experienced. And she's non-white, she's I think she's, though I don't know all of the nationalities that she is, but she's not a white person. And so a lot of the controversy came from some racist views that were apparently expressed by the royal family. So a couple of weeks ago, Piers Morgan was doing his news program, and Piers Morgan, for whatever reason, and this might be calculated on his part, I really don't know. He did, he is somebody who sides with the royal family. You get the sense that he's a very traditionalist kind of English guy, where he believes in the monarchy, he believes in the traditions and the sort of, British way and stuff like that. And that's all good. I mean, if that's what you want to believe, go for it. Again, this is not a political podcast, so I'm not talking about, the values of any of that. But when he saw that interview with Oprah Winfrey, Piers Morgan took on a very confrontational, stance on that, right? And he really, very vehemently, disagreed and actually called Meghan Markle, I believe her name is, called her a liar, like straight up said that she's lying, And so I remember seeing it for like maybe a week or two between the interview, or a week or two after the Oprah Winfrey interview with the prince and princess, I guess she is, where you could see like there were, and I see just little snippets, as I see them pop up on my Facebook feed and stuff like that, right? Or in my news sources, it's covered here and there, But every, he would come out and make these statements and again, very sort of, controversial, and that's all good, But really, what I'm trying to get to is what happened on his show a couple of weeks. 2 or 3 weeks ago, and a couple weeks after the Oprah Winfrey interview, right? And so what happened was, right, and I watched the whole clip, and I watched it, years and years ago, right, when I was, hanging on every word of CNN and MSNBC and getting all riled up about all of it, right? I would have relished in watching this man go through what he just went through. I would have enjoyed it, right? I would have posted about it. I would have, been like, if I had this podcast back then, of course I wouldn't have this particular podcast. If I had a podcast back then, I would have been on here saying, did you see what that crazy guy did? What a blah, 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 right? And that's what a lot of people are doing to this guy, right? That you see in other news stories, people are, really ridiculing what he did, right? And so what he did, if you haven't seen it, I mean, look it up. It's really my heart bleeds for the guy. I mean, I felt so bad for what he was going through, right? but literally in the middle of the show, right? Like, and this is a show, this is his career, right? This is what he does, right? And in the middle of the show, he literally just got up, took his microphone off, and just stormed off the set, right? In this angry, irate tantrum, and just, yelling at people as he's walking out, and just stormed over, like in the middle of filming the show. It's a live show. And right there in the middle, he just, boom, just lost it and split, right? And so I watched that, and I'm thinking like gosh, what must have been happening inside of him, right, to make that decision that's literally going to change his life. Right now, I'm sure he'll figure something out. I mean, he's a famous guy. Somebody will give him a shot, and he'll get a new show, and he'll be okay. It might take him a year or something. I'm sure he's got plenty of money. I'm sure, it's not like, it's not somebody that, kind of, there's a lot worse things that happen to people in the world. Let's put it that way, right? So we're not going to, but emotionally in that moment, right? I think part of it is that I identified so much with it, and that's the point that I wanted to make on this episode here today, is that, when we watch that happen, and if you haven't seen it, I do recommend you take a look at it, but take a look at it with the intention of feeling some empathy and compassion for this human being. Okay, no matter what your opinion might be of him, right? Even if you watched his show before and you just detest this guy, even if that's the case, I invite you to watch that clip of him losing it, and try not to feel, happiness over this man's pain and suffering, right? But instead, see if you can feel a little bit of compassion, or a lot of bit of compassion for him, because this is a great opportunity to practice that. Right. And remember, that deep level of happiness, right? What type of person are you? Are you the kind of person that's going to laugh at somebody who's suffering? Are you the kind of person who's going to feel compassion for a person who's suffering? Because that means something to your well-being and to your happiness, right? That's an important aspect. And so I recommend you do this. But what I really wanted to talk about today with this is how, it's so rare. And actually, there is another person for whom this a different sort of thing happened. And I think I mentioned this yesterday in the podcast, is that there's a guy, and I know I mentioned it, I should have looked up his name, and I'm so sorry. But he wrote a book called How to Be 10% Happier, right? And this was another news guy, right, who was on a live broadcast and lost it during the live broadcast. His thing was not so much anger as it was just a panic attack, right? He just literally just like forgot how to speak, right? Like he literally just seized up and couldn't even speak the rest of his piece, right? He couldn't even get through a minute or something. And so he literally, they had to cut away, right? He lost it on air, right? Very publicly. Now, again, this is not quite the same, because, Piers Morgan, it was all about the anger and resentment and indignation, right? Like that's how he was playing that, that's the card that he played. And so to see it so publicly, right? And to see somebody who has so much at stake lose it so publicly is something that doesn't happen very often, right? And it happens very rarely, in fact. And again, this could be seen as an opportunity to say, ha, 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 you see what happens to big bully jerks, you deserve it, blah, blah, blah. Yes, there is an opportunity for that, no doubt, right? But there's also an opportunity to see what's really going on here, right? And to see that Piers Morgan is just a man, right? He's got the fancy clothes and the fancy image, and he's on TV, he's got the bright lights and the makeup, and he's, got this, he's got the whole machine of media behind him, right? So he seems larger than life, right? But he's just a guy, right? And he's just a guy who completely lost his stuff, right? 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, completely lost himself, completely, right? And I'm sure that, of course, he's back on the news now talking about how, more people agree with him, and, he's got lots of support and stuff like that. And so he's doing damage control and spinning and all that kind of stuff. And that's what he's going to do. He's a media guy, right? And that's okay. But the reality is, though, that in that moment, right? In that moment where he made the decision to stand up, rip off his microphone, and storm off that stage, right? That sound stage on the TV. When he made that choice to do that, right? That was a decision he made, right? Whether it was consciously or I suspect not so consciously, right? It was probably a very reactive, automatic kind of thing. It's not like he sat there and said, I wonder what's going to happen if I get up and storm off the stage here. No, he just probably did it, right? And so what he did there was the same thing that all of us do, right? All of us are Piers Morgan, right? The guy that you see, shouting at a poor, 22-year-old barista at Starbucks. That guy is Piers Morgan. The person who I just read a story on Facebook from a dear friend of mine who had somebody tailgating her like 2 feet behind her bumper when she was going in a quiet, rural area. She was already going above the speed limit and this guy was just riding her. She finally pulls over and he flips the finger and he's honking at her and honking at the next person and flipping them the finger. And that guy is Piers Morgan. Right? The person who, who you may have met at some point, who had some sort of rage for you. That's Piers Morgan, right? There's a little bit of Piers Morgan in all of us, right? Because we all get angry and we all get indignant and we all get, that ragey feeling sometimes, right? And that's not the problem. The problem was not Piers Morgan's anger. The problem, whether you want to call it a problem or not, like the thing that changed the course of Piers Morgan's life and career was not the anger. It was the reactivity, the expression, the uncontrolled expression of that anger. Right? And so what he did is the same thing that so many of us do every single day. And I talk to parents a lot about this. And this is something I always tell parents, like, don't make a long-term emotional development sacrifice for a short-term behavioral goal with your children, because that's what so many parents do. Right? But that's what so many people do as well, right? Like Piers Morgan made a very short-term decision to rip off that microphone and storm off that stage and bark and yell and rah, 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 right? That was a very short-term decision that has very long-term implications. Now, again, I think he'll be all right, but who knows? I mean, there are people who have been through that kind of thing, and they're not all right. That's been the end of people's careers at times. Right. And so this, and I hope the best for the guy. I really do. I mean, I think he's very confused. I think he's very angry. I think he could use some mindfulness and heartfulness coaching. And I wish I could get the opportunity to work with him. If you're out there, if you're watching, Piers, give me a call. There's a link in the description. I will hook you up, and I'll get you to a place where you're not going to feel that uncontrolled level of anger, right? Or if you do, you're gonna, because again, it's not feeling the anger that's the problem. It's how we express the anger, and that doesn't mean either that you're not allowed to express the anger. You should express the anger, right? As Dr. Gabor Mate says, the people who never learned how to express their anger, he met those people in the palliative care ward. Right, which means that and he illustrates this in a wonderful book called "When the Body Says No." That it's that lack of the ability to process and express our anger that actually results in life-ending diseases. Right, and he has case after case after case that he talks about in this book. I mean, it's really intense, and that's what we're messing around with here. Right, this is like a loaded gun we're playing with. And you can see how the loaded gun just went off for Piers Morgan, right? But you can also see how it happens to regular folks, right? And so my point is that, like we all have that, it's 2 points I want to make. We all have that potential, right? And so that's why building this skill to be able to develop the awareness of your anger so that you really feel it in real time, right? You feel that bubbling up of anger, and getting tools then to process that anger and regulate that anger, right? Just like the knob on your stove at home, right? Whether you have a gas stove or an electric, it doesn't matter, or even a propane tank out in camping, right? If you only have one setting, so it's only off or ultra high, you can't. There's very few things that you're going to be able to cook. Right? You can make pasta. You can fry an egg. No, you can't actually. You can't do an egg on a really high level of heat like that. You can make pasta. There's probably just a few handful of things that you can actually do. You can cook things in a wok. Wok is high heat. I just recently got a wok. So you could stir fry for the rest of your life. So stir fry and pasta, but that's it. You can't cook rice. You can't cook eggs. You can't cook, lots of meat and fish dishes and stuff like that are going to be out of your reach, and so you limit the ability that you have to operate in your kitchen. Well, the same thing happens in our lives, right? If we're just, if we're not regulating, if we're not able to turn down that heat to accommodate the situation, well, then we're all going to be just, burning stuff in our lives all the time, like Piers Morgan did the other day, right? And so the other thing that I wanted to the other point that I wanted to make about this is that when we see people go through that, right? Maybe you might have even instinctively said like, oh, Piers Morgan, Art's going to talk about what a jerk he is. You might have lost your place here and thought that I would do something like that. But the fact is that that's what most people do. Right? When you see somebody, having an argument at Starbucks, right? What do people do? They whip out their phones and they record it, right? So they can post it to their Facebook later and see like, oh, look at this person losing it. Oh, that's crazy. Why do we do that, right? It's probably because we're seeing somebody else do something that we could see ourselves doing. And it's nice to see that it's not us doing it, right? But there's another way, right? And the other way could be to show compassion, right? And to approach it with the compassionate and curious heart, right? And to the point where, maybe you can step in instead of standing there with your phone and recording somebody melting down right in front of you. Maybe you can step in and say, hey, would you like to come outside and take a couple of breaths of air? Can I help you here? Can I, is there anything I can do to make you feel better? Remember the story that I told you about Thich Nhat Hanh, right? A Vietnamese Buddhist monk who was very active in the Vietnam War. He talks about what he calls boat people, right? Which were people who would just overload these little boats and go out into the sea to get to Thailand where they could live in safety, right? Away from the war. And what would happen is many times these boats would just tip over, capsize, and hundreds of people would die, right? And so what Thich Nhat Hanh says in this beautiful lesson is that if one person in that whole boat, just one person, maintains their cool and sits there with confidence and calm, then he or she inspires the rest of the people. And then maybe another person sees it, and then a third, and then a fourth, and then a fifth. And before you know it, everybody's sitting in a calm and non-reactive place. And you know what happens then? It's much safer. The boat might actually survive if you distribute the weight evenly and everybody's sitting quietly. And Thich Nhat Hanh, then kind of converts that to talking about the earth is just a rowboat in the sea of the cosmos. And we're all scared, right? We're all walking around here. We're all Piers Morgan. We all have Piers Morgan inside of us, and we're all, acting from this place of fear, because that's where Piers Morgan was acting from, right? He sees that, the world is turning, right? The world is not buying the monarchy anymore. The world is not buying racism anymore. The world is not buying sexism. The world is not buying imperialism anymore, right? We're growing out of that. We're transcending. We're evolving out of that as a human race, and it couldn't happen quickly enough, in my opinion. But Piers Morgan is clinging to something that's that he doesn't want to lose, right? And so he's suffering because he's clinging to that, and he sees that it's he's in the minority, and he's losing his grasp on this thing that he wants to keep so badly, so much so that he's willing to rip off that microphone and storm off the set, right? So we're all afraid like Piers Morgan is. We're all, suffering on some level, just like Piers Morgan is. And just like Thich Nhat Hanh tells us that if we can, if you and me can be the ones who regulate ourselves and remain cool and calm and compassionate and curious, even in the face of frightening times, then maybe we can save 100 or so people, right, from toppling over in the sea. Right? And if we can save 100 or so people, then those 100 or so people can each save 100 or so more. And on and on and on, fractally, until we reach 8 billion people and everybody is saved. Right? And that's why, again, those levels of happiness, right? When you can, you decide who it is that you want to be, right? That second level of happiness of being true to your meaning and your integrity. Right? Which is to say, I'm not the kind of person who's going to make fun of somebody who's losing it, because I could lose it too. But not just because. I'm not going to do that, because it's important to be compassionate, and I know that, right? So is that the type of person you want to be, or do you want to be the person who films somebody losing their crap in a Starbucks, right? And then the deeper level of happiness, right, is the concept that we're actually impacting the world around us in a positive way. And so if you are that person who helps, pardon me, if you're that person who helps, like, let's not even say a few hundred people, let's say you help one person, you inspire one person to not lose their crap and to regulate themselves. Maybe that's your family member. Maybe that's a stranger at Starbucks, or maybe it's somewhere in between, right? But if you save one person, the potential is that that person could save another person, and that person, another person, and that person, another person, and fractally and virally, it will continue to grow, just like I said a minute ago, to the point where eventually it's every person. You can have a part in that. And it's so easy, and it's so beautiful, and it's good for you, and it's good for the rest of the world. Which is why every single meditation that I ever teach or guide anybody through, it's always part of it, is that we're doing this work for our own benefit, but we're also doing this work for the benefit of all those people whose lives we touch every day. From the closest and dearest loved ones to the most anonymous strangers, and everyone in between. Everyone with whom you come in contact is going to benefit from the work that you do on yourself. As Ram Dass said, the only thing I can do for you is to work on myself. And the only thing you can do for me is to work on yourself. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video and this podcast. I wish you well. I'll be back again tomorrow. All the links are going to be below. Don't forget to do all the podcast and YouTube stuff. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all that stuff. Rate and review on the podcast. I would appreciate that. It really will help get us, more viewers and stuff. So, again, that's the idea, right? We're trying to help as many people as we can. So if you can do that, that would be really kind. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'll be back soon. Bye.